Green Bay. And Denver's going to win this division. Kansas City is now third behind Denver and the Chargers. I think it's fascinating with Bo Nix. So the Broncos quarterback is Bo Nix. He's on a rookie deal. So the Broncos roster, especially defense, it's pretty stacked. But it's interesting about Bo Nix. He is 21-9 as a starter. And you could say, well, it's the defense. Well, he's taken the fewest sacks during these last 2 years. That's a skill. He leads the NFL in game-winning drives. Yes, leads the NFL last 2 seasons. That's a skill. Okay, he has the second most fourth-quarter touchdowns since he entered the league. That's a skill. And by the way, this is where I will defend him. Outside of Mahomes, he also has the most pass attempts. Okay, Sean Payton's hard on his quarterbacks. He's incredibly demanding. It's a thick playbook. This is not Big Ben when he came into the NFL out of Miami, Ohio, went to the Steelers, and they were babysitting him for 2 years and letting a dominating defense control the games. You know, Ben would make 17, 18, 19 throws. They were kind of babysitting him. That's not what this is. This is, here's the playbook, kid. Memorize it. We're going to use all of it Sunday. So there's no babysitting with this kid. They're asking him to do more. And I'm going to defend those quarterbacks who have to throw it 45 times a game. And I feel like with Bo Nix, and people do this, everybody's made up their mind on Bo Nix. Because you saw a lot of him at Oregon, and you've seen enough of him here, and nobody wants just to acknowledge he's really good in the fourth. He's got all those things I love. He's durable. He's coachable. He's athletic. He's productive in the fourth quarter. He's a winner. He doesn't listen to the noise. You know, he's not on social media. He's 100% team guy. But and I've said, if you love Caleb Williams in Chicago, you got to like Bo Nix. Both have good rosters. Both have excellent O-lines. Both have brilliant offensive coaches. Both have nice weapons. I like Denver's receivers. I don't care what anybody says. I love Cortland Sutton. So if you like Caleb, you got to like Bo Nix. Both are uneven. Both are very, very good in the fourth quarter. Yeah, I hear that. Caleb's a superstar. Bo Nix, I'm out on. So far, great offensive coach, great O-line, defenses that take the ball away, right? One's leading the division. One's battling Green Bay to lead a division. Here's Bo Nix on being underdogs, actually, at home to Green Bay.
Seems to be a playoff game, so this will be an intense game on the field. It'll be an intense environment. I don't really care. My mom thinks we'll win, so that's all that matters.
That's a great comment. My mom thinks we'll win, so it doesn't matter. I assume they were asking about the whole FA, you know, how does it feel to be like an underdog? Clears throat. Great response, Bo. Great response. I'm not going to keep getting into the whole Bo Nix versus Caleb Williams. Doesn't really matter to me, honestly. I do think it is interesting, though. Let's just use first things first as an example. Show that I love, show that I watch. This is not some grand comment against first things first, because I'm just using them as an example. All last season, it was all talk all off season, as in last season, right after the draft. There was so much hype and discussion around Caleb, and understandably so, the generational talent #1 overall pick. So I get why he's going to get a lot more attention. And then even throughout that course of the season, I understand that people at that point are going to be more interested in what's going wrong with Caleb rather than what's going right with Jaden or Bo. And I kept using Jaden and Bo as a tandem there, because I'd say that very statement. I'd say, hey, we're having more conversations about what's going wrong with Caleb and the Bears rather than what's going right with Jaden and Bo Nix. Like, this is what we need to be talking more about. Like, that's what we need to talk more about. And then the season obviously continues to unfold how it does. And now from my viewpoint, the next season is kind of a reset button. Someone said this to me in the comment section when I was talking about Shedeur Sanders. And this clears throat was just a couple days ago. And they were like, so do you think Shedeur should have been drafted in the 5th round or higher? And I said, I don't really care where he was drafted. He goes, that's disingenuous. He's like, I'll remember that and see if you talk about anyone else where they're drafted and stuff like that. And I was like, listen, going into the draft and right after the draft, like, yeah, I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about the draft and like where someone was drafted. But like once they're on the field, once they're playing, I don't care where you were drafted. I don't care if Bo Nix was a 4th round pick, if he was the 5th quarterback drafted. None of that matters to me. You're on the field, you got your shot, you were playing. That's all that matters to me. I do not care where anyone was drafted. I don't even remember at this point who was drafted earlier. You know, this quarterback or that quarterback. Like even if it's like a couple years, I'm like, I don't remember who was drafted earlier. Trevor, Kyler. I don't remember. Was Trevor number 1? Trevor was number 1 overall, right? And Kyler was 2. Like, doesn't matter to me. I don't care. None of it matters to me. You're playing football. That's all that matters. So I don't want to hear that as being an excuse. Clears throat. And yet there's still nothing but endless conversations about like Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. And yet we have the number 1 team in the NFL led by Bo Nix. You know, it's the Denver Broncos. And yet there's still not like the same level of consistent conversation around Bo and just the Broncos in general, but especially Bo individually. And I'm not sure it makes a whole lot of sense at this point. I really don't. It just doesn't add up. I'm not, you know, like even the Packers and the Bears playing each other. I get it because it's Packers and the Bears and all of that. But there was still this focus on what do we need to see from Caleb? What do you expect from Caleb? And then after the game when he threw the interception, it was like, you know, are we putting that on Caleb's shoulders? What does that mean, et cetera, et cetera? And I'm just not quite sure that we ever had that type of level of intensity and conversation, especially at least this year surrounding Bo Nix, even when they play the Kansas City Chiefs. That was a big moment. Now, the aftermath, there was some hype around the Chiefs, or excuse me, definitely not around the Chiefs, around the Broncos and Bo, but it was definitely still more dominated by the Chiefs. And it is tough because the Chiefs, to be fair, the story at this point in time, the bigger story and the more interesting conversation, unfortunately, is going to be more about the Chiefs losing rather than the Broncos winning. That's just the way it works. It just is what it is. And like I always say, it's up to the Broncos to change that, right? It's up to them to keep winning, to now make that story no longer the story, the losing. But it makes sense because of the CH who the Chiefs are and what they've been able to accomplish. But because of that type of phenomenon, because of that type of effect, we then downplay and underdiz a team like Denver Broncos and underdiz us and underevaluate a quarterback like a Bo Nix. And it's such a disservice. It's such a disservice to this team and to Bo. And it's funny because Colin will say, Colin just said here, you know, I hear people say, oh, Caleb's a playmaker and, you know, he's a superstar and bomb out on Bo Nix. And you know what my thought is, who's saying that? Because I don't know who's really talking about Bo Nix that much and comparing him to Caleb. Like, I don't hear that conversation at all. Tell me where it exists. Maybe in the comment section, maybe with friends and family, maybe with other coworkers who work inside the building, but like I don't hear it. I don't see it. And it's funny because we always actually do those types of interesting conversations, those interesting comps. You know, who would you rather, like we always do that type of stuff, like who would you rather draft, Jaden or Caleb? And it's after there's way more, you know, actual playing, like not, you know, after there's established runway. And if Jaden was still playing this season, and if he unfortunately didn't get so banged up, they would probably still be having those types of conversations. And I guess my question is like, even in those conversations, why is Bo not even remotely included? It just continues to be really, really interesting to me. And again, maybe I'm confused, and I've said this months ago, maybe even recently, like to me, the Broncos are just one of the largest, most iconic franchises. It's like, it's just, I just see them as the definition of the NFL. It's like when you think of like football, what's football? I'm like Denver, Green Bay. I'm like, they just stood the test of time. They got the history. They got the intense place, you know, the intense area to, you know, home to play the fan base. Like it just, you know, they got these iconic, you can go to 1990, whatever, 1980. You even can look at old school footage that's like, you know, nowhere close to being HD and still show it as like, that's football, man. That this was actually one of the most famous Super Bowls in the history of the NFL, right? And I'm just like, so it's not like they're the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Carolina Panthers. And that's why then I always kind of go back to that circle. I'm like, is it just because the Kansas City Chiefs are so popular? And so, like, so many people have talked about in the media about the Kansas City Chiefs so much that by virtue you kind of squeeze out and push out the Denver Broncos and the Bo Knicks. Kind of like we see how it happens with First Things First, understandably so, because of Nick, right? And that's kind of, a big aspect of that show. But does that happen even in other shows and in other conversations, podcasts, etc.? Just obviously nowhere near at the level of like what Nick Wright's going to do, obviously. But it is bizarre to me because this is a big game. This is a huge game. Now, memory serves me correctly. Really, the two biggest games are this game and the Patriots versus the Bills. And so I do think it makes more sense that the Bills and the Patriots, right? The winner of that game, that's going to open on Monday. That would be my guess, right? If the Bills lose, it's like the Bills are failing, Josh Allen, et cetera, et cetera. Drake May is king now of the AFC East. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. But this game, if the Broncos win, I don't know. Will it be the second story? Like I'm so fascinated to see. So I'm hyper aware of these types of things, and I think fans, to a degree, they're not going to be as locked in as much me, because I'm looking at it in a very specific lens, because I'm like, in my mind, first off, I just know the teams that I want to talk about, right? And I'm excited to talk about. And so let's say the Broncos win big on a Sunday or something. And I know it's a game that I really want to talk about. I'm like, I'm going there thinking, okay, what's happening in the sports world? How is Get Up working? How is First Things First Take the Her right? And I'm like trying, I want the clips that I really want to make that I'm really excited to talk about, like sticking with the Broncos here. I'm like waiting for that to be like, when is Khan talking about that? Is the first segment, the second segment after the commercial break. And I have to then try to figure out, like, let's say the Herdline news, which is always like my secondary way of making clips, rather than it being like an actual segment itself. If I see like, if he does like a Herdline news, I like, oh, the Broncos won big against the so-and-so. I'm like, oh, do I make a video with this, or is he going to talk about it in the second hour or something? Have it its own segments, or like, I'm always trying to figure that out. And, it's I always find it fascinating. It's like the Eagles lose. That will open the show with that. The Eagles win. Jalen Hurts plays amazing, has a perfect passer rating against the Minnesota Vikings, and it's like a tiny little 3-minute segment leading into the commercial break, and you're like, well, wait a second. Like, that's what, like they lose a game and it's front page news, and Jalen Hurts play is amazing, and it's just like, nah, we'll talk about it later. And and the Broncos saw that against the Giants, right? It was like, this is a disaster for the Giants. And it was just Giants, and there was like no actual, and their conversation about like the Broncos. And so if I look at this schedule here, Ravens, Bengals, that has legs to it. Chiefs, Chargers, definitely legs to it. So there's other games that people are going to be wanting to talk about, the popularity aspect. But I mean, this right here, like, this is what Boyks just even said. This is like a playoff game. Like, this is massive. This is two top teams. Many people think that the Packers are a true bona fide Super Bowl contender. So, and you have the Broncos, who have the #1 seed. Like Colton is saying, oh, the Packers are competing to win the division, and it's just like, and the Broncos are trying to just solidify the #1 seed in the first round bye. Like, this to me right now is like the biggest game for the Broncos of the season. We once upon a time, we would have said the Chiefs, and I think from like a vibes, like kind of mentality it is, right? Beating the Chiefs, beating massive. But considering who the Chiefs are right now, like, this is actually the game. This is the game that's actually like, all right, can you do it? Can you bring it? Can you continue to play at a high level? And, we also got Phillip Rivers and the Cold Speeds, the Seahawks. Like, that'll probably open the show, open all these shows, and I can't blame it. That I will be all over that, and, that'll be incredible. And then, if Shador beats the Bears and outdoors K. So there is other stories, right? Undeniably. But if we're being more actually focused on football itself and a little bit less of the, the tabloidy kind of type of drama, we're really actually looking at the Patriots and the Bills because, again, this has massive repercussions for the 1 seed as well as the Packers and the Broncos. And both teams are playing formidable foes. They're not playing a random team like the Saints or the Titans or something, right? Like they're both playing real teams with real expectations. And so, but the Broncos never seem to be on the positive end of that. And from someone who not only enjoys watching these shows, talking sports, having sports conversations, I'm also incredibly fascinated at the whole meta discussions of these types of things, of just how is the media operating, right? How are they saying, okay, this is what we're going to open up a show with, this is what we're going to talk about, this is how it's going to unfold. Like I'm always fascinated. That's why I get fascinated between the order. It's like, okay, well, he opened up the show with Caleb Williams like beating the Giants. It's like, okay, I guess so. And then then the next segment is about JJ McCarthy failing. And it's like, okay, I mean, I guess those things kind of make sense, but then then what about this huge win by team, or what about that? Like I find it all fascinating again, and then seeing how other shows approach it like clears throat. It's just there's times on a Thursday night football game on like First Things First. They don't open the show with that, and they'll be like, sometimes I'm expecting, oh, they're going to talk about, the Bills win or the whatever, whoever just won. And instead, it's like, expect Eagles tail slide to continue, or count Kansas City Chiefs bounce back game on the horizon. I'm like, wait a second, you're not opening the show with like the Thursday night game right now. Like, wait, what? How does that make sense, right? It's always fascinating. Or when you have two stories like this one, the Packers and the Broncos, where you have two individual teams that are worth the conversation. It's who gets the story first, who gets top billing. And we'll see that especially with the Patriots and the Bills, does the winner. And if the Bills beat the Patriots, it'll definitely be the Patriots. Or if the Bills beat the Patriots, it'll definitely be the Bills. But if the Bills lose to the Patriots, is it about the Bills losing or about the Patriots winning? Essentially, when Colin talks about the game, do you see Drake May in the background, or do you see Josh out in the background? And, in this game, I think it'll very much be just the winner, right? Broncos win. It'll be about the Broncos winning, not about the Packers losing. And actually, I kind of go back on this slightly, because I could see if the Broncos lose, it'll be more about, are the Broncos overrated, right? Is Bo Nix not ready to lead this team? Obviously, it will all depend on how the game actually unfolds. So that's some of the stuff that I kind of add layers to, and I just find interesting. I'm always interested to see what are the discussions themselves, and how they unfold, how they're unpacked. And so I've already gone on all the rants that I could about Bo Nix produce production and what Sean Payne asked him to do, and some of his accomplishments, the stats that he's put up, and why some of his stats are even misleading, all the drops, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's just like, there's no more of doing that in this immediate moment. But like, I did find it fascinating that Colin was just talking about the public perception around Boone Nix and just the Broncos team as a whole. Yeah, I'm just curious, how much discussion does this game end up getting at the end of the day? When and where too? First hour, second hour, Von Nix, Jordan Love, Broncos, Packers, because these are two real teams clashing against each other. And I'm trying to think of like what another example of this that could have been in the past. The Eagles and the Ravens last year, or like the Eagles and the Bills or something. The Lions and the Bills, that was a real game that happened last year as well. Those games felt larger than life. Those games felt like we're about to learn a lot about these two teams. And we did. Josh Allen was insane against Lions, and we were like, oh man, this Lions defense is rough right now. We were like, oh. And when we saw the Eagles completely shut down Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, we're like, Eagles are for real, and the Ravens are struggles, or the Chiefs. And the answer was no, right? Right. And so it's like that game, those games, when you look back on them, they're like, yeah, man, they taught us something. We learned something in those games. And I'm purposely picking those games because they're not like rival games like the Bills and the Ravens and the Bengals and the Chiefs and the Bill, right? Like those are rival games. They have like their own energy to it, but like yeah, that's what this game is to me right now. And it's not being discussed like it right now. Even though we're at this peak of the season, this isn't week 3. This isn't week 6 where you're still trying to figure out who the heck are these teams. It's like, dude, this is as close of a playoff game as you can get without it having like, okay, it's the final week of the season. If you win, you're in. If you lose, you're out. Like those are for all intents and purposes playoff games. Like when we always say like this is like a playoff game, like this is as much of a playoff game as you can get without it having like actual concrete playoff ramifications outside of trying to solidify your seeding or something. Like this is it. 2 top teams going toe to toe, and they both really want to win and will do anything they can at all cost to win. Okay, so it's just like that's why I kept saying in all my Broncos videos throughout this week of just like you're going to get all your questions answered. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Denver Broncos, Bo? Do you think they'll be able to keep on winning? Spoiler alert, Colin picks the Packers to win. I already did that video for his Blazing 5. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.